I
Hate that.
have transitioned over, and it looks like we are good to go.
Hey, look at us.
And there we are. Yay! Hi, everybody.
Yay.
Yay.
Hello.
Hello.
Wow, look at all that shiny stuff I put on the screen. That worked out well.
If you could only make our names a little bigger.
Would you like that? I can make them bigger.
Sorry. No, that's okay.
Here, let me. I'm just going to get one giant Sly Flourish right over top of your face.
Oh, yeah, that's all right. Yeah, that's all right. Always be branding. I'm good with
See
that.
if that works for you.
I'm good with that. There we go.
You like that right there?
Sure. Yeah, that's perfect.
We can't see you, but everybody knows you're at Sly Flourish. All right. I'm going to put that back, but that was fun. Okay. Shall we get started?
Yep. Let's do it.
All right. I suppose I should record locally to make sure everything sounds good. Did you check the audio, Mike? Does it sound all right?
I'm listening. Why don't you do your intro and I'll listen with you muted.
Cool.
Oh, there's a badass echo.
On who?
On me.
Oh. Is it also doing it? Sam makes some noise. Is it also happening to him?
Am I echoing as well?
Yeah, he's echoing as well.
I don't know how to fix that. If anybody knows OBS really well.
So if you look in OBS, there's only one gauge
There's
going
only
up and
one
down,
gauge
going
for
up
each
and
of
down.
us, yeah.
With chat. Hey, if anybody knows how to fix an echo with Skype. Yeah, it's pretty awful too.
Let's see. It's not doing any monitoring.
It's not even a tight echo. Like a half a second off.
I assume you're not getting the echo of us talking live and then it streaming. Because there's a slight delay on that.
No, it's definitely the stream one.
I don't even have. So I don't hear any kind of echoing at all.
Right.
Yeah, what I'm doing is muting our Skype so I can hear it go through in Twitch.
Right. No, I mean I don't. I'm just saying I don't even have anything open, so I don't know what's going on.
There's some futzing with some properties. I don't know if it'll make it better or worse. Okay.
Mike, you're muted. I can't hear Mike.
So you don't see multiple audio gauges bouncing in the mixer.
No.
When I'm talking, there's only that one feed coming in.
Oh no! When you're talking, I'm seeing both your gauge and Sam's gauge bouncing at the same time.
Yeah, so you might have to, I think, mute one of those.
Say, what if I just mute one? Yeah. Now talk.
Okay, so I'm going to test my own audio and then flip onto Twitch and see if I can hear it. Yeah, that is much better.
Oh, sweet.
So yeah, you just can't have both of us in the same time. Now have Sam talk and see if you can hear.
Sam, talk.
I am talking right now. Can you hear me at all?
I see the gauge bouncing, even though I've muted him. So.
Yeah, so he is coming across on Twitch. So you just want to have only one of those.
Okay. So for whatever reason, OBS using the NDI is pulling the audio from each separately for the whole call, but only one video. Okay. Well, now I know. We fixed that.
We sound good now.
Yay!
And we learned something.
We learned something. I like learning.
Thank you.
Okay, the show's over. Thanks for watching.
Everybody. Gotta go.
All right.
Hope you have a great game.
And now Sam will have an extra 3.5 minutes to edit out of the front of this recording.
That does not count.
I already started recording the audio, so
that does not count as my time.
Yeah, I haven't even gotten the timer out yet.
Full time.
I don't even know what I last talked about.
So. I had to go back to my notes because I always keep my old script, my script. Just so people in the audience know, this is my script. You can see right there is the order and which sponsors to talk about, and then there's my notes about my game. And so I can always go back to the last one and figure out the next order and what have already talked about. Some of what I'm going to talk about I actually already talked about with Robert, but I figured I'd mention it again since you slackers couldn't make it.
Right.
Let me get the timer ready. And all right, are we ready to start?
Ready.
All right, let's get going. All right, this is Behind the DM Screen. It is January of 2020, the first Behind the DM Screen of a new year, new decade, depending on who you want to talk to. And we are 3 DMs talking about our games and helping each other out. I am Jeff Greiner. Over there is Mike Shea.
Hello.
And next to him, I'm on the stream. So next to him on the stream on Twitch is Sam Dillon. Say hi, Sam.
Hi.
So just so you know, I've been playing around with streaming our recordings. If you want to get the Tome Show a little bit quicker, but not as pretty because it's not all edited up and made to look nice or sound nice with all of Sam's hard work, you can watch it live this way, and then I'll usually put the audio on YouTube within a day or two after that. Plus, Behind the DM Screen is not only being streamed live on the Tome Show's Twitch, which is twitch.tv/Tome Show, but it's also being co-broadcast over on the Sly Flourish Twitch channel, right, Mike?
Yep, it is.
Which is twitch.tv/Sly_Flourish.
_Flourish. Yep.
Somebody else beat you to the Sly Flourish?
Some other jackass has the one without the underscore.
Man. Well, don't they know that you're the jackass that's supposed to get Sly Flourish?
The lawyers are working on that.
All right.
The lawyers are the only ones making any benefit out of that.
Right. That's true. All right. So let us go ahead and get started. We have 15 minutes on the clock, and Mike, you are first up to go. So tell us about your game, and let's go.
All right. So I am running 4 D&D games now. 3 regular weekly games, and then an irregular game that seems to happen just about weekly, or pretty close to it. But I'm only going to talk about one of those games. I'm going to talk about my Ghosts of Saltmarsh game.
You have 2 of those, though, don't you?
I have 2 Ghosts of Saltmarsh games that are both at roughly the same spot, which is they just finished The Final Enemy, which is the 5th adventure of the 7.
Okay.
And they have 2 to go. And the 2 adventures to go are Tamarat's Fate and The Styes, both of which are considered standalone adventures.
Right.
And I more so than the other adventures, I am stripping these for parts and building a conclusion to the whole book from those parts.
Well, because the original book isn't really a campaign.
Correct.
It's a collection of adventures, 3 of which are kind of a campaign, and you've mashed them up. And
I've just finished the 3rd one. I think there are 2 large campaign threads that you can run through the book that work pretty well. One is the Scarlet Brotherhood and all of their craziness, and 2 is Tharizdun, the Chain God, and all the various cults of the Chain God, and all that kind of stuff. Sort of exposing the fact that there's this thing, and and one of them is sort of the big omnipresent threat, which is there's a hole in the bottom of the ocean called the Endless Nadir, in a place called the Endless Nadir, and this is all part of the Styes adventure, but you can weave it in through the other adventures previously, and you can tie it into like the what is the one? There's one with like the Isle of the Abbey. You can have a whole thing with the Isle of the Abbey. And I think there's another one where you go on an island and deal with a bunch of people. And you can also have them be sort of cultists of the Chain God or of the Elder Elemental Eye or any one of the variants of Tharizdun that you want. So in both groups, they have cleared out the Sahuagin threat. And one little bit of history that I threw in there is that became a threat because they fled the Endless Nadir, maybe even caused the hole in the hole in the ocean. And went to the coast to get away from this devastation that is occurring out there in the middle of the ocean. And that way you can like, okay, we got rid of the Sahuagin, but we still need to get rid of the thing that caused them to come here in the first place, which is this big, great rift in the ocean. So I kind of set both plots in front of them and said, you can either go to the styes. There's things that you need to accomplish in the styes, which I placed as a seaside city that is falling apart. It's sort of the anti-Saltmarsh. So where Saltmarsh managed to weather the transfer from being part of the Sea Princes, under the control of the Sea Princes, to being under the control of King Scotty, the styes did not do nearly as well. And after the Sea Princes left, it's fallen apart. And it's become this criminal underworld. And there's these 4 corrupt politicians that are pretending to rule the place, but really it's owned by a bunch of thugs. And the truth is it's run by a cult that lives underneath it. And it's got definitely a Shadow over Innismouth kind of thing going on.
I got the impression that city is larger though or was larger than Saltmarsh.
It is, but I'm playing it smaller.
Okay.
Right? I'm playing it. It's easier to play it smaller for me. So you don't. Otherwise, it could be too big. So the idea that like maybe it was once bigger, but it's mostly abandoned now. Anybody that could have left has left, and all the people that are left are running like their own crazy religion things going on, and they all sort of worship the sea, kinda, and they're weird. You know, everyone's weird, and there's lots of thugs that are kind of running around, and all of that is sort of like, well, they know that there's this cult that lives underneath the place, and they have like a temple, a really old temple that's out there, which probably has some abolithic connection, and so it can tie in there. So what I can run of the adventure is that there's a murder mystery there. A guy was accused of committing these terrible murders, and when the characters arrive, he has just been executed. And the party can sort of deconstruct his case to kind of find out, like, well, he actually did the murders, but he did them because he was controlled by an aboleth, right? Spoilers. And the aboleth is controlling a large number of people in the city, including one of the 4 council members, whose name is Mr. Dory. Another little fun tie is that Mr. Dory is a member of the Scarlet Brotherhood, but he's a rogue. He's a very powerful member of the Brotherhood. He's probably the one ranking member of the Scarlet Brotherhood on the coast, right? So even the ones that worked in Saltmarsh actually work for him. But he's corrupted by the aboleth, and he actually is serving the Chain God, which gives an opportunity for the characters to actually ally with the Scarlet Brotherhood in order to get rid of this greater threat, which I don't know if it'll work out that way or not, but it's kind of a fun angle, to put in there. And I plan on dropping that in front of it. For my Sunday game, for example, they managed to find the assassin who fled Saltmarsh. Did I tell you? Yeah, Saltmarsh is run by vampires now. I told you that.
Well, I remember. Right? I think the last time we had a big conversation about this campaign, it was about the vampire and what you were going to do with him.
Yeah, so they let the vampire free, and every time they go off, they come back, and the vampire's got more control over Saltmarsh. Okay. But he gives them really good information. So he shows up. He's like, hey, by the way, I found out that Manistrad Copperlocks, the council member, her sister's a member of the Scarlet Brotherhood. She now works for me, but she doesn't know it, and she's still passing information to the Scarlet Brotherhood, because why give up the source? But in the meantime, I'm inside the source, so I know all the information we're getting. By the way, I know that the guy she was working for, the sister of Manistrad Copperlocks was working for, that was actually the Sage, the Scarlet Brotherhood member who used to run here, who is now in the styes. And I want you to go kill him, because he's the one that gave me he stabbed me with a silver dagger and gave me a big scar, and I hate him, and I want you to kill him. So they're like, the vampires become the quest NPC, and the parties, most of the parties like, man, I hate this vampire, but he's kind of right, and he has given us this really good info.
Right.
So sure, we'll see where this goes.
Of course, that info usually tends to work out in his favor as well.
Yeah, but he's willing to throw him a bone. Like he doesn't have, the fun thing about the vampires, he's not this power hungry, like, I'm gonna take over this whole land. He's gonna end up there, but it might take him a couple hundred years to get there. And he's on vacation. He's like, man, I was stuck in a tomb for like 1,000 years. I just want to hang out on the beach at night, and I just want to, like, sure, I'm going to go ahead and take 4 people and turn them into spawns, because I'm not going to get my own drink, right? But, I'm not going to kill everybody in the town. So he made a deal with the party that he would eat townsfolk.
It sounds like you would consider voting for this vampire.
No, he's not such a bad. Well, that's the fun part. That's not the party. Yeah, compared to today, hell yeah. But so, the fun bit is when I watch the players arguing about it, right? Like they're on they're across the whole spectrum. Some of them are like, yeah, he's great. Like this is the best guy we've ever worked for, right? And other people are like, we're gonna have to kill him. So it's a fun mix of reactions. But in the meantime, they're like, well, that's a problem for another day. Let's go to the Styes. So the Styes I'm playing out is sort of this murder mystery and a little bit of exploration. And then they can kind of go where they want. And so they might end up going straight to the main bad guy's house, which is what happened in my Sunday game, and facing Mr. Dory, right? And if they can get the drop on him, he's not nearly as hard to beat as they would if he knew that they were a real problem.
Right.
But they still have to figure out that the Aboleth is down there. They're going to figure out that the Aboleth is the one that sort of drew this powerful entity into the world that they have to get rid of, which is a black whale in one game and is a acid kraken in the other game. And because why not have an acid kraken?
Say, define acid kraken. Like if you lick it, it gets you high.
Well, no, it's like its tentacles. Probably that would be pretty good. Probably that would happen.
Yeah.
It's a kraken whose tentacles can open up and fire acid.
Okay, sure.
And I don't know. Did I tell you how the acid kraken came to be? This is one of those like when the players hand you something, you grab on with both hands. So they were fighting a mage, and the mage fired an acid arrow through the hull of their ship. And when they managed to get the ship back in port, they said, "What the hell happened?" And they said, "We got attacked by an acid kraken." And then so I said, well, of course there's actually an acid kraken. All the people go, oh, acid kraken. Yeah, we got to worry about that. And then I'm like, I'm putting acid kraken into my game. So then when they were facing what's the name of the adventure where you have to go on the ghost ship?
Salvage operation.
So when they're doing salvage operation, there's a point where you get attacked by a giant octopus or something.
Yes. And
guess what? I had like one of the kraken tentacles bursts in and opens up and fires an acid arrow at the guy who called it the acid kraken. It's like, oh, sweet justice, And so now there's an acid kraken out there that is actually a minion of Tharizdun, and it's a warlock. I love the idea that you have warlock krakens.
Of course it is,
because it's Tharizdun.
Yeah.
So so they're going to deal with all the mystery at the Styes, and then the final one is they have to go down deep into the ocean and seal up. Yeah, I'm good. I got plenty of time. 5 whole minutes.
Just give you a heads up.
Yeah, that's not passive aggressive or anything.
It's the beauty of audio or video. I'm just letting you know.
That was my cue to start interrupting you. That way you don't get to finish.
Asking questions. Then the next one is them going down in the depths of the sea, and I'm probably going to strip a lot more out of Tamarot's Fate. So two things is like, A, I don't care which way they play these two adventures. They can choose which one they want to do. So I'm taking the last two and making them parallel, and then they can pick one, and then I'll beef up the other. And two is with Tamarot's Fate, there's a whole thing about defending another freaking abbey on another freaking island. And I'm pretty sure there's been 3 of those. So I'm throwing out, that out, and they're just going to have to face a pirate ship of a ghost pirate ship filled with undead, plus facing all the stuff that's down in the sea, and then go to the Abolithic lair and seal up the hole that is leading to leading into the abyss, into the abyssal realm where Tharizdun is chained. And that's going to be, I think that's kind of how my campaign's going to end.
What level are those characters?
They're like 7th now, so I'm keeping them lower level than the adventures require, because I'm also kind of redoing whatever monsters I want to do at the time.
Right.
So I don't worry too much about a 7th level with like 5 players. That's really pretty powerful. You can do a lot of damage with 7th level characters. So I don't really have to tune it very much at all. I'm pretty sure when I look at the stuff in Tamarot's Fate, I don't think I'm gonna have to tune it very much. And I play around a lot with like the kind of stuff they face. I improvise a lot of that as we go. I'll read ahead and be like, what kind of monsters might they face? So I like all those like crazy pirate undead things. Mm-hmm. I forget what, but Tamarot's Fate has a whole bunch of like undead pirate assassins and undead pirate scourges and all sorts of things. And I think those will run pretty well. But I don't think a Aboleth is out of the question. Aboleths are one of those legendary monsters that I think is over CR'd. I think you can take care of an Aboleth without, especially with my complete lack of tactical capability. It's not hard to run it. So I think it'll end up fine. Yeah, so this has been good. We're closing in on this one, and then Next up for me is going to be running a homebrew Eberron campaign for both groups. Okay. Both groups decided they want to do. We were looking at either Descent into Avernus or Eberron, and both groups said we kind of like Avernus, but we think we'd rather do Eberron. So I'm like, okay, Eberron it is.
There you go.
And I got a whole idea about that one, which is going to be, Raiders of the Lost Ark, only down the weapon of the last war, whatever caused the mourning.
The Mournland, yeah. That's awesome.
That's the, yeah.
And for those people watching and for Sam and Mike as well, I realized most of the way through your discussion that I didn't hit record on the video. So people watching this on YouTube got like the last 2 minutes of your discussion.
I think you can download it from Twitch.
Oh, yes. I'll have to check that out then. Cool, thanks.
So you can probably pull down whatever was recorded on Twitch and put that up on YouTube.
All right. So people watching this on YouTube, because I'm not going to edit it, are going to hear this conversation, and one of those two things happened. But you still got like a minute and a half, so go ahead.
I don't know. I think I'm good. I think I'm done.
Yeah?
I passed my minute. I passed my minute along to Sam.
Well, I will pause and not take that minute away from Sam and mention that if people want to support the show, they can support us in a few different ways, and one of those ways is go to Amazon or DM's Guild through our affiliate links. If you go to thetomeshow.com, you can click on the links to Amazon or DM's Guild, and then we get a small little percentage, and you get the exact same experience, but it helps us out, and I use all that to spread the love and support all the people that help make the show possible. So that is a thing you can do. So Sam, with an extra,
I want my minute back. So do you guys have any questions or thoughts about my?
I knew it was too good to be true.
Just curious. Not giving up my minute.
I mean, my question is more about what was the basis for the decision to choose Eberron instead of are they do they just like Eberron, or they've never been in Eberron, or what's the
I think they're kind of ready for that sort of a new thing. I don't know. That's a good question. I didn't really ask. I just said if you had 99 pennies and 2 cups, where would you put your pennies? And one guy's like 49 pennies in Avernus and 50 pennies in Eberron. So. They didn't really say what, but I'll tell you, as soon as we said Eberron, 3 players got up from my table, went to the game shop and bought the Eberron book, and they came back with it. So they're invested now. Yeah. I said wow, the shop just got $150 because we decided to do this.
Yeah.
So,
nice.
It's still scary because I'm running without training wheels there. Right. I have no adventure.
Well, if it helps, there are some pretty fantastic 3rd edition adventures for Eberron that I've really enjoyed playing, and I converted some of those fairly quickly and easily into 5th edition in the past. I had a whole concept of running Dragon Heist in Eberron at one point, and then my new group decided not to go that way, which is fine. But that would totally
I don't know
be
why
doable.
You didn't just add that onto the stack. You could have Margrave and Eberron with a little bit of
I'm certain it all would have been there, but they decided they would rather do one of the players didn't want to experiment with a new setting. He was already familiar with the Forgotten Realms.
You could pretty much just have an airship fly over every so often.
Absolutely.
And be hey, look, we're at Eberron. And
that's right. That's pretty much be it, right?
Is that a dragon mark on that zombie over there? Right. It looks like a dragon mark.
And, is that the sound of a lightning train?
Yeah, I hear a lightning
and then
train.
Back to the regular adventure.
Right, and then right back.
Players
one just roars fast. Right?
Yeah.
You might have a player who's a Warforged or something, and so
right.
Anyway, I think there's a lot of things you can do in Eberron, and there's a lot of good sources. I ran an adventure, Eyes of the Lich Queen. I really enjoyed. Mm-hmm. So if you're looking for good adventures to convert, that's
I was looking at Vampire Blade.
Okay.
Something Blade of the Vampire, something like that. I bought that one recently. It was cheap. And I thought I might strip some stuff for parts, but we'll see.
Yeah, Eyes of the Lich Queen definitely had some elements that were Indiana Jones-ish. So I think, if that's what you're looking for, that worked out pretty well. So.
Yeah, cool.
All right. So that's all of Mike's time, plus, with the ad in between, I guess. So Sam, your 15 minutes. Oh no, it's me. My 15 minutes are on the clock, and I get to go next. So, like I mentioned before we started recording, I recorded a whole episode without the two of you last month. Mike couldn't make it, and then Sam had a big snowstorm and lost power. So it was just
betrayal.
Right. It was just guest DM Robert Aducci and myself talking about our games, and that went pretty well. You can watch that. I don't think it's on the Twitch anymore, but it's on the YouTube channel, I think. So, and the audio will be out later. But I talked about, if you can put your minds back to 2 months ago, the last time we chatted. Last time we chatted, I think my players were still in the middle of Blue Alley. And we had finished Blue Alley a long time ago now. And I wanted to give them an opportunity to do some of those extra like side missions and side faction quests and stuff. And especially because I was throwing in things like from Sly Flourish's Fantastic Adventures and
Yay.
Tales of the Margrave and actually some Ghosts of Saltmarsh as well. But to do that, they had to leave the city. And if you're on a tight timeline, you never want to like leave the city, right? So I had the thing where they find, they weren't just told, oh, the creation took the stone and went to this location. It was the creation, Nim's creation was given a map that will reveal a location in like 10 days. And then they got a copy of the map, and that way they've got 10 days that they can run around and do some other things. They decided, even though the player who was aligned with Brigand Dareth had left the group, he wanted to play something else and whatever. And so despite all my efforts to really tie that character strongly to the storyline, he decided to walk away from it, at least for the time being, as sometimes happens. But they were still really interested in the Brigand Dareth faction mission that I'd given them, which was Salvage Operation, which you had mentioned earlier. Because they're like, well, that sounds profitable, and we need money to finish up our repairs on the manor. And so they went after that. And so they took the ship up. They did that whole mission, and that was fine, and that went really well. One of the things that I threw into, so they get the box, and all the rest of the treasure is theirs, right? And I mentioned to Robert, they were really clever. The whole idea is that you work your way down, you get the box, and then the octopus attacks, and you have to like race up, and all of the monsters you didn't fight end up above with you, and you have to go through them all in the middle of this race to get out before the ship sinks. Well, they instead like started using a Ring of the Ram and casting Shatter and whatever, and just enlarged a hole from the tentacle coming through. The druid wild-shaped into an octopus, grabbed the chest because he could carry it, and they all just swam out the bottom. And I thought that was clever,
Yep.
And then I had one of the things in the chest that had to go to Brigand Dareth because they wanted all these deeds and whatever, right? One of the things that was in the box was the Infernal Puzzle from Descent into Avernus, because I'm going to be running that adventure later on down the road, and I just wanted to sort of have it make a cameo. Oh, but that's Brigand Dareth. They're not giving that up, and they'll just sell it down the road, and it'll end up where it needs to be for that adventure. But they've, I'm throwing in all these little cameos for the next campaign, so that when they see those things, it'll be like, oh, I remember that thing, right? And so that happened, and then because of where I located everything on the map of the Sword Coast, at that point they weren't very far away from a task that they got from, I think it was Force Grey, or the Grey Hands is the actual faction. And that was to deal with this weird cult of dusk that had appeared nearby, and they were, they found this map and they followed it to the observatory, and it just happened to be on the cliffs overlooking the Sword Coast, and so they were right there. And Brigand Dareth arranged for them to charter the ship a little bit longer, and so we went into that adventure from your Fantastic Adventures book, and that went really well. That Roper, which I was not expecting to be that big of a challenge, just really kicked their butt.
Ropers are hard.
Yeah, especially when it was, because it was on the ceiling, so they couldn't even reach it, And I was worried because I was using it in their higher level than I think the adventure was originally intended for. I don't remember what level you had it pegged for. So I'd actually
they're all those were aimed at roughly 3.
Yeah, and they're 4 and relatively competent. So I wanted to up the challenge a little bit, and I made the incorporeal things and the fire pits I don't remember if they were specters or whatever, but I made him whatever the next level of incorporeal undead difficulty was, and that was probably overly difficult, but they made it through, so it worked out okay. And so yeah, they got through the whole thing, and then I made the you had sort of the MacGuffin, right? This Book of Shadows sort of thing in the vault. They managed
sealed in a big case hanging up above a big pit
over a effectively bottomless pit, right? Right. And so and I also they had fun with the names of all the NPC cultists. I don't remember what they all were, but now it's become a running gag that like all NPC bad guys are like Dave and Chuck and whatever, because there was a few of them that were like pronounced as mundane names, right?
Sure, yeah.
But inside the vault, the book that they found, this Book of Shadows.
I don't think they were Dave or Chuck, but good.
No. But you get the idea. Like some of them were pronounced in in ways that sounded like mundane names, and so now and I made it a point to like when one of them died, and the other ones were like, oh no, Chuck, what happened? So they all knew the bad guys' names, right? They had fun with that. But the book inside the vault, which was sort of an unnamed, like make this what you need it to be, the way you wrote it.
Yeah.
I left it as the Book of Shadows, but specifically dealing with Ravenloft. So it is the book that tells the journey of the last person who defeated Strahd 2,000 years ago. So this is going to be a useful resource for them, a few levels down the road when we transition over to that. Then they took the boat and they headed to a task south of Waterdeep, and so they passed by the city again, and this is where I think it was the Order of the Gauntlet tasked them with dealing with this haunted house down on the cliffs overlooking the water, right? Which of course is the Sinister Secrets of Saltmarsh, and so they ran through that, and I don't know why, but they really hated Ned Shakeshaft, right?
Everyone hates Ned. Yeah, he's a hard guy to love.
I made him sort of and obviously there's some weird shadiness. Oh, I totally just like snuck in here and they beat me up and tied me up, and they're like, yeah, but then why do all the bad guys know your name and keep talking about, hey, what are you doing with them? And they just sort of eventually let it go. I also I don't know if you've looked at the digital version of Sinister Secrets that's on D&D Beyond.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is true on the website, but it is on the downloadable book through the app, that there is a clip of Chris Perkins singing a sea shanty.
Really?
At the beginning of the thing. So when they first walked into the haunted house, I played that, and that was Ned in his room, like singing.
Oh, God, I wish I had done that.
It was brilliant. I really liked it. I connected it to my Bluetooth speakers so it played loudly and everybody could hear it. Like, it was really and Chris gets real, like, he goes through the whole song, and then at the end he just starts muttering random like pirate phrases. And at one point the random pirate phrases is him going, "Arr, pirate noises, arr." He literally just says pirate noises. It was fun. So anyway,
I have those cultist names: Dante, Chris, Lenathan, Lenathan, Kesha, and Brian.
Yeah, they enjoyed Brian.
So there's a Brian in there,
and Chris.
And Chris, Krys.
Like
the wavy dagger.
But they don't know how it's spelled when I pronounce it. So.
Chris, spelled like the wavy dagger.
Yeah, when they knock Chris down into the bottomless pit, and somebody goes, "Oh no, Chris!" They don't know.
Chris and the wavy dagger.
So no, that was fun. And then last session, which was just last week, they worked their way back to Waterdeep, and it was the Sinister Secrets of Saltmarsh was great for them because it was full of contraband brandy, and they're looking to open a tavern, right? So now they've got a bunch of supplies already, right? So that worked out well. But now they're back in Waterdeep, and they're sort of cleaning up some of the smaller local sort of faction missions, and we're getting I don't know that we're getting super close time wise, but I think they've enjoyed the side tasks. But I think it's getting long now, and it's time to get back to the main task. So I'm going to move them, I think, towards the the seasons chapter of Dragon Heist, where suddenly, you do the chain of events and get the stone and deal with all that. So that's coming up soon. Now I had two questions if I can remember them both. I can only remember one at the moment, but I'll think of the other one maybe. We'll see. Because they're getting close, they're going to be getting the Stone of Galore soon, and I'm using a modified version of. Are you familiar with the Alexandrian remix of Dragon Heist?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
Remind me.
So it's this whole sort of alternative way of organizing Dragon Heist, and I've taken some ideas from it, but I haven't used it whole cloth. But one of the ideas that I liked was the idea that the Stone of Galore is actually incomplete, that it's missing eyes, and the more eyes you recover and put into it, the more powerful it gets. And so at its lowest level right now, when they find it, it's going to have one eye in it. And that'll that's enough of the sentience of the stone to help them find the vault. The second eye will be in the vault, and the third eye is actually going to be in Barovia. And it slowly increases in power as they go. So the Stone of Galore is going to continue to be a thing in the campaign for a little while going forward, I think. But once they get the stone, what happens is that the adventurer has the stone give them, hey, here's the 3 keys you need to get into the vault, right? And there's sort of a random, here's some random stuff you can roll up, and those are the 3 keys. Right? And some of them are kind of fun and entertaining and whatever, but I also kind of want to make the keys... I want them to do some lifting for me in terms of the narrative, right? Mm-hmm. And one of the things I want to do in my way of trying to build in little homages to the upcoming campaign, I think one of the keys is going to actually be a soul coin, right? So that way they're a little bit familiar with that before they do Descent into Avernus and see them again there. And then the other 2 are where I have questions for you. Because one of them, I want it to be something that they get from the Castellanters, because that's the villain, and they've got the big celebration coming up on Founders Day. But I want them to have a little bit of extra incentive to actually go to the Castellanters and deal with that situation. So I want the second part of the key to be something they have to go to the Founders Day celebration and thwart the Castellanters and do all that in order to get that key, that piece of the key. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. At one point I was thinking, because one of their sons was transformed into a chain devil. And I was thinking, well, what if one of the components for the key is a link from a chain devil or something like that? I have modified the Castellanters a little bit in that they're not worshiping Asmodeus; they're worshiping one of the dark powers of Ravenloft to tie it into that story a little bit. But I didn't know if there were other
one question I have is who originally used the key to lock the vault, and did they split up the eyes? What was their reasoning for doing so?
Yeah, so it's the same person. It was Neverember, not Renaer, but the other the bad
Dagalt.
one. Yeah, Dagalt, Neverember still did it, and then split up the eyes because at its most powerful, one of the abilities that the stone can do once all the eyes are in there is it can sort of erase a memory from the world, from existence, right? And so that's why he was able to use it to make everybody forget that this vault existed, including whoever built it and whatever. But of course, if it was reunited, it could undo all of that. And so that's my vision as to why he split it up.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
And of course, the one piece that ended up in Barovia was accidental. Nobody purposely goes to Barovia, but somebody was carrying it, and it ended up there. I haven't figured that out. I got time for that yet. But
I kind of like the idea that Dagalt Neverember might have an agent who's stuck in Barovia or died there, who had that piece.
Yeah,
right?
no, I've got a bunch of. I've already laid a bunch of seeds for different members or leaders within different factions that have disappeared in the mists that come through Waterdeep every now and then, so that when they get to Barovia, they can still sort of engage in these faction ties a little bit, because there's people there that are still connected to them.
Right.
So what should they be What should they be looking for? What are my other two keys? I want one of them to connect to the Castle Lanterns, and the other one, I don't know. I could just roll in the chart randomly, but I didn't know if you guys had ideas.
The issue of a key, like a link of a Chain Devil, the problem is, like, they must have had it before, right?
Oh, that Daggalt must have had it before?
Yeah.
Sure.
But so something else, like I actually had it that the Chain Devil had the Stone of Galore.
Oh.
Like, that's where they stashed it, was with him, because they're like, who's going to go after a Chain Devil?
Oh, that's nice.
But so it could just as likely could be that the Castle Lanterns got their piece of the key and gave and has said, well, we're going to leave it with our son, the Chain Devil, to protect, right? And
my other thought was that the third one,
it could be something else.
The third one, or maybe even this one, since they're worshippers of one of the dark powers, is to make it something reminiscent to Barovia, to connect it further to that later part of the campaign. But
yeah, I mean, maybe a holy symbol or an unholy symbol of that dark power, where the center of it is the eye.
Yeah, or
something like that.
Or maybe it's a holy symbol to that's the symbol of the what is it, symbol of Ravenkind from.
That'd be it. Well, yeah, except then how that means it got out, right?
Well, but maybe it's not the exact that same symbol. It's just another one of those holy symbols. It's not the big magical one.
Right.
I've already actually introduced the Sun Sword. They don't know it yet, but I've just this last session, I introduced the Sun Sword into the campaign. After they walked out of the Sinister Seekers of Saltmarsh Haunted House, a Vistani group sort of wandered down with Madame Ava in it, and they made it a deal to sneak one of the PC's mentors, who had been trapped in Barovia, out of Barovia, so that he could deliver information about this character's lost mother, who had actually gotten trapped in Barovia, and here's her celestial sword, and it's actually the Sun Sword, which at some point during the adventure in Barovia I will have shatter and then become the Sun Sword. Right now it's just a +1 longsword, but
gotcha.
But yeah. So yeah, maybe maybe a holy symbol of Ravenkind, which would be weird in the realms because that's not a thing. So yeah. All right. Well, if you have any other thoughts, let me know, because I've got about a week or two to figure it out, and I'll keep turning my brain on it.
I don't have thoughts because I don't know Dragon Heist that well, so I don't I'm not nothing is coming to my memory that would be a really cool tie back to any of the other stuff happening.
Yeah, in the adventure, it's written. You can just roll randomly, and some of it's like a dwarven drinking song. You just show up at the door and sing the song, and it opens that part of the lock or whatever, right? But it could also just be random stuff or what have you. But which could be fine too. But if I'm going to tie other things in, I'd like to try to see if I can use those keys to do some other heavy lifting for me. So.
Right.
Anyway, my time is long up. Mike didn't go over for once, so I guess I'm okay on time.
For once. I love this. Passive aggression. Not even that passive.
No, that's not passive. All right. So I want to mention to folks, if you want to support the show, another way you can do that is on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/thetome-show. You can support us directly for $1 a month or whatever you feel comfortable contributing. And then I always go to the Patreon whenever I've got questions about, like, hey, I'm thinking about these 3 things. Which one would you guys want to hear? Or what reviews do you want to hear? Or I went to them a lot when it was like, hey, we're thinking about streaming. Would that be something you people are interested in? And should I make it a Patreon reward? And they were all like, no, we just want it to be available. So go do it, So here we are. All right, patreon.com/thetome-show. Sam, you are up. You get to talk about your game now that I have been following along with, at least if you're going to talk about that one. So go ahead.
I am going to talk about that one because I haven't played any other ones since the last time we talked.
It's been 2 months.
I know. Well, but I've played 5 sessions of that one. I just haven't played with my other group. My other group's very intermittent because they're teenagers and they have lots of after school activities and all that stuff. So, okay. I don't actually remember where I left off. But I believe...
Good summary, Sam.
Yeah, I know. Isn't that great? It's so quick. It's so quick.
I know where I left off listening, but...
I'll tell you what happened. I'll tell you what's happened in the past, 3 or 4 sessions after they got to the island. So I believe that the last thing I talked about was them going to the island and meeting the Haka. And meeting the Haka chief.
I recall saying something about them about to do that, or they had just done that,
Yeah. So the chief wanted them, or that they were asked to fulfill. Basically, they ended up fulfilling a prophecy, or that the tribe thought that they matched a prophecy, right? So they asked them to perform this duty or task, and the group didn't actually understand what was going on until they actually had accepted the duty. And so then they went to the palace. They went to this temple where the incubation grounds of the Haka are. By the way, for my players, by the time I get to the end of this, there's going to be some major spoilers. So if you're a player of mine, stop listening right now. Because normally we don't stream these. So by the time my players hear it, it's already happened and they already know what's happening. But
normally we do now, but we haven't in the past.
Right. So they go to the temple where the incubation for the incubation grounds for the Haka are, to try to rid it of whatever is disturbing it. And it turns out that the temple that they're going into is the Palace of Mud that the crab person had told them about, or had shouted at them, seek the Palace of Mud, seek the Howling Gate and the Palace of Mud. And it dawns on them as they're going through, oh, this is actually the Palace of Mud. We found it kind of accidentally, or maybe there is some sort of prophetic thing going on, and now we need to deal with it. So they get down there, and they find a big giant gate, which one of the players, like a portal gate, which one of the players happens to end up closing with the help of his sentient weapon.
Well, is it a portal, a gate, or a ladder? Because I remember that being a thing.
Yeah, so for this, because it's a spell, it's actually a modified gate spell that a goblin was casting, and so when the PC closed it, his players had some actions that he happened to do previously, and it made it so that the gate spell went into his mind. So He now knows a gate spell, even though at that time he was only 6th level.
Right.
So he doesn't know if he could cast it, but he now knows the spell. So they also rescue a Haka that has been tied up there and was about to be sacrificed on an altar. However, when they try to free him, one of the players hits the chain that's holding him onto the altar, and it accidentally hits the altar, and the altar's made of coral. And the player who had closed the gate, he's a sea elf, and he part of his backstory is about this odd coral piece that he found, and he's a warlock, and he worships like this great sea father thing that's related to the coral, and he's not sure how that all works because he kind of happened upon it. That's how his backstory works. But when the altar was hit, he was also hit. Like, it hurt him, so it did damage to him. So they know there's some kind of weird connection there. So they decide, okay, we're not going to mess with this anymore. They leave. They take the main goblin that he had been forced into the puddle of mud, which was boiling mud, and so it killed him. They fished him out, and they figured out there's several dozens of, maybe even hundreds of creatures down in that pit that aren't actually the Haka eggs. That's where they were sort of creating the army. So now I have to go back a step and tell you, before they got to this actual room, they were in a room and they found another lens that projects images. Mm-hmm. And when they accidentally activated it, it projected an image. And the last time they did it, it projected an image into a place where there was a portal, like a teleportation circle, and they could actually go there if they wanted to. And there were people there that heard them. So it was a two-way communication. So they weren't planning on activating the lens this time, and they did it accidentally. And when the lens activated, they saw a scene, and they don't know if the scene is current or future or past. But what they saw was the main evil guy, whose name is Laralac in this game. They saw Laralac riding a really enormous manta ray under the ocean and leading an army of undead creatures, sea creatures and sea-based humanoids and all kinds of stuff. And the army is so big that when it swims in a particular direction, it creates these enormous tidal waves that start ravaging the coasts of all these islands. And they're like, holy crap, we don't know if that's what caused the sinking, which is why most of this world is underwater, or if that's actually happening right now. We don't know what's going on. So they decide to leave the temple. Well, they go try to rescue the Haka, and then they leave the temple. They don't actually resolve anything. They just figure out, oh man, this is a lot worse than we thought. This is a bigger deal than we thought. They get back to the village, and they question the goblins. And they actually retained the head of the dead main goblin that had been casting the spell because they wanted to cast Speak with Dead on it so they could get some information. They got some information. The Chief Haka decides that based on their sort of revised reading of the prophecy because of all this information that they learned, that perhaps the sea elf who has this special piece of coral with him and the sentient weapon, that perhaps he should be the chief. And so the main Haka chief basically abdicates his position and tries to offer it to the PC. Now I can tell you some things that are happening based on these PC's backgrounds that make a little bit of sense. And so now my players definitely stop watching this right now. Turn away, go do something else. So here's the thing. Each of these PCs has in their background some royalty in their family of some sort or some ordained power.
Do they know this, or is that new information for them?
They're learning it through the game,
okay.
Right? It's part of just because of certain actions that they have taken and because of some of the magic items I gave them, when they broke onto the pirate ship and They stole the apparatus of Qualish, which is also a planar travel vessel, by the way, and the and the bunch of the magic items that the pirates had been, basically stealing from everyone on the planet. The Lutrinian, the Otterfolk character, they have a sword that can only attune to and be wielded by and activated by a member of the royal line. That is the what they call the ancient line, that the first hero of the Lutrinian people. And so as soon as the first time that character used the sword, it sort of became obvious to them, oh, this wasn't supposed to really activate. I actually must have this bloodline in my line. But what that means in the game is if they're anywhere where there's a Lutrinian, they're going to see, if they see this Lutrinian activate this sword, they're automatically going to know, because this is one of those sort of overarching myths that everyone of that race knows. So they're going to see immediately, oh, wait a minute, this is this person. We need to go ask them what's going on. We need to help them because obviously something's happening, that they're using that sword. You're not supposed to be using that sword. So that's one thing. So there's one PC has this sort of, in other words, they're going to be able to gather all the Lutrinian people to help wage this war if they need to combat this underwater undead army, right? Mm-hmm. So that's also part of why the sea elf has this. His sentient weapon that he found and his actual patron, his warlock patron, is part of the coral patron that he has. There are 2 or 3 different options I could have it be, but part of it is that it's something really, really powerful, and it has to do with the Blue Plateau, and so he could end up being some sort of scion of this great old power, and therefore be able to gather an army to help offset this other army, right? So he's going to be a leader of an army. That's going to start with him basically the Haka owe fealty to him, right? Mm-hmm. They kind of made a life debt to them in a manner of speaking, right? The human cleric, one of the things that happened in a couple of sessions ago now is that after they retrieved that lens, she activates it and she sees a vision of the original room that they had seen when they activated the first lens and when they had two-way communication. But now she realizes if you move that lens around, which they did not do before, you can actually sweep the room and see other things in the room, not just the table it was looking at. And she sees a cage that has a humanoid laying in it. And as she walks forward, she says, "Hello, hello." And of course, because it's two-way communication, the person in the cage hears her, sits up, and it's her mom. And so the thing is that that's her whole character backstory, was her mom went off on this mission and then never came back. And what she's been wanting to do for several years is become strong enough in her clerical powers to be able to go find her mom. And so now that's what she's doing. Well, so here's the thing. She had a vision in the second or third session of the game where she goes to this one major port town, and she goes into one of the largest libraries known to exist. And when she goes in there, she looks at the name that's being signed in, and the name that's signed in is something like the favored daughter of Goros. Goros is the name of the god that she worships. And so she goes through this whole sort of dream sequence, and at the end, she looks in a reflective surface, and it's her mom, not her, going through it. So she's convinced that her god has given her this vision of her mom basically being captured. And so when the book was signed in, it was the favored daughter of Goros. So she thinks her mom is the favored daughter of Goros, and that's why they've captured her. And they thought that too. But now that PC is actually, it turns out, probably the favorite daughter, because whatever they thought the mom was going to be able to do, she couldn't do. So now they're just keeping her because they're still trying to figure out a way to use her power to do the thing that the big bad evil guy, thank you, 3 minutes, I got it, that the big bad evil guy needs to
it's more effective if you don't talk about it, but go ahead.
No, it's good. Fine. It's whatever. It's okay. It's okay. So that's kind of where we left off. They decided they're going to try to go. They summon the Taudius, the goat of advice,
which
advice
is my
goat.
favorite NPC.
Yeah. So they summon him and they ask him about the portals and gates and ladders, and he tries to tell them some things and he makes some suggestions, and they end up basically deciding that they're going to try to figure out how the apparatus of Qualish, which they've named the Curiosity because they don't actually know its regular name, so it's the Curiosity. They've decided that some of the buttons in there, some of the levers in there, are actually planar travel buttons, triggers, and they're going to try to figure out. And Taudius, one of the things he tells them is that, or one of the things that they find out through their through the Speak with Dead with the main goblin guy, was they need to find a place that the main bad guy's laboratory is in a place called Darkport, which is actually Gloomrot from the Shadowfell. I'm using that book as the basis for that whole city. And it's really the Shadowfell, or in my game, it's called the Dark Plateau. It's the Dark Plateau's reflection of Calport, which is the main city where she went to find life. Right. So they end up going in the Curiosity. They figure out, they think, how to work it, and they land outside the walls of Darkport. And so they see those walls, which, if you remember Gloomrot, the walls look like they have stretched skin over them, and there's these faces that come in and watch them, and they sort of scream, and it's really eerie and creepy, and there's misty fog all over. They land the Curiosity, they get into town, they hide the boat, the ship, and they walk down the street, and they get approached immediately by the Deathless Guard. And the Deathless Guard, the Deathless Watch, are the town guards. And they're really, really corrupt, so really all they want to do is get money, and basically you can bribe them. So they walk up, they ask for a registration fee, and instead of just saying, okay, here's your 25 gold or 50 gold or how much is it or whatever, one of the PCs who has not been very boisterous or super active at this point, actually, he decides, he's this little halfling, instead of just saying, okay, let me try to bribe you back or negotiate with you, he just goes off on the Deathless Watch and says, what do you mean a registration fee? I don't pay registration fees. Do you know who I am? And that's basically where they end, because then the Deathless Watch now is mad at them, and they're tailing them everywhere they go in town, because, of course, they're going to try to extract bribes from them every single step of the way. But they have to watch them first to figure out how powerful they are. Right. So that's going to be a major problem. That's where the last session ended. And see, there you go. I made it. Questions?
So, and that's a preview of an episode that hasn't come out yet, right?
Yes, I'm in the middle of editing it right now. So that's session 15, and there's probably, since they went directly to Darkport, there's probably only 3 or 4 sessions left of this arc, depending on how they deal with the big bad at the end. Okay. That could take 2 sessions by itself, depending on what they do. They like to plan and talk, so there might be a whole session of planning and talking about that. The one thing that I don't know right now is when they got the special weapons, all the special magic items they got, the halfling, he got a weapon that will actually let him cast a wish spell.
Oh, but he doesn't know it?
But he knows it. I gave them, for the items that they attuned to, I gave them the information.
Okay.
And basically all 4 of these items are super powerful, wondrous items, and some of them are sentient or have some amount of sentience power in them, and his does as well. And his is an artifact of the change in winds, which is basically the luck god in this setting. Is it's like karma. It's called the come around.
Okay.
Because everything comes back around, right? So you might have good luck, and then it might turn bad, and then it might turn good, and it's like the yin and the yang, that kind of idea. And I think he's afraid to use it because he has yet to even really use, because what I gave him when I gave him the description of the item was, it basically says the very first time that you use this weapon as a weapon, you end up with a tattoo imprinted on your palm of your hand that is shaped like a Mobius, which is one of the symbols of that god.
Sure. And
he doesn't actually worship that god, but it's a halfling deity, and he knows all about it, and it's very scary because it's karma, and you don't want karma coming back against you. So he's sort of really wary about it. But the problem is, if he doesn't use that weapon, I can't do the things that will get him to the point where he might choose to lead a bunch of people in this army if they have to have an army fighting against Laralac riding this giant manta ray.
Does everybody know what his weapon is?
No.
They know he... I don't remember this conversation coming up or anything about this weapon before. So.
No. So their main weapons, I told them they are free to share that information. It's not a secret unless they don't want to share it with each other. And if they want the other players to see what it does during the game, like I know what it is, they know what it is, but until they use it, it's not going to, be obvious necessarily.
Right.
And just like the Lutrinian, the other players don't. They sort of, the sentient weapon referred to the Lutrinian as royalty,
right?
And like made mention of it when they were having a debate about what to do, and everybody was like, "Wait a minute, what royalty? Like, what are you talking about?" So they know that there's stuff going on, but they don't know every single thing. And because he hasn't used that player has not used that weapon to use any of its special properties or to fight with it, they don't know anything about it.
Okay, yeah, I mean, because normally like that kind of a situation in the game, the way you're running it, would mean that is the perfect opportunity to have that discussion during a debrief. But there's no way for you to do that without spilling the beans. I once, it reminded me, I once gave a ring of wish with one wish in it to a character in a campaign. But I wouldn't tell them what it was. It was a 4th edition campaign. I told them it had old magic from before the spell plague, right? Because it was like old version wish, right? It was like 2nd or 3rd edition wish. So the whole idea was that I gave it to them really early on, like 3rd, 4th level. But they didn't know it was a ring of wish, and I was just listening the entire campaign, waiting for that character to say, like, "Man, I wish whatever." And as soon as they said those words, I was going to spring it on. They went through the entire campaign, and this character never said the words "I wish."
Yeah.
And so I told them afterward, and they were kicking themselves.
So I'm thinking what I think, because this player hasn't played D&D for a long time, but he did play 2nd edition for a brief amount of time. And I think that he knows that it's powerful.
Right.
And he's afraid to use it unless it's really important. That's what I think is going to happen.
Well, and especially if you're used to older edition D&D wishes, like there was definitely a sort of a vengeful like DM, like make sure to twist this and punish him for it,
and it's a sort of karma, right? So like that's the thing, right? So I'm absolutely positive that he will make a choice at some point. He might choose not to use it, but there will be places where he's going to have to make a choice whether to use it or not. And if I have to, I can remind him, like with a whisper to him, remember, you have this. This is an option you're not talking about, but you need to know that you have this.
You know what I really,
which I've already done.
What I really kind of want you to do is I want you to have a separate debrief just with that character, to have that conversation for like just a 5 or 10 minute debrief after the game, after everybody else has hung up, just between the two of you. And that might be interesting. Yeah. And that way the others don't get spoiled on it. But
yeah, so we have a list of debrief topics once we sort of got the rhythm down of what we were trying to do.
Right.
And sentient weapons and choices are on there. And actually, in this last episode that hasn't been released yet, we talked about player agency and how do you deal with, sentient weapons and player agency, and what happens when and player knowledge versus character knowledge and all that sort of stuff we talked about. And I thought maybe he would mention it, but he didn't. So
right on. All right. Yeah. So good. Any other, Mike, you have any other thoughts or questions for Sam?
No. It sounds really cool.
So I will tell you that they're all 8th level now, and I have not run a single regular monster with this entire group. I've always been futzing around and doing other things with monsters, because the monsters as written it's like fodder, these characters. Even from about 3rd level on, they've just been like, they slice through things.
How many characters?
4.
4.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah. Now, from their point of view, I think they think, we almost died a couple of times. But from my point of view, I'm like, they're walking over some of the stuff that I have thrown at them, So, anyway.
Cool. That might be worth a conversation in a debrief after the campaign's over, too.
Yeah.
Right on. All right. Well, in that case, I'm going to go ahead and call that the end of this episode. So thank you all for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this. If you want to get a hold of the podcast, you can email thetomeshow@gmail.com, or you can find the show. It is at The Tome Show on Twitter. I am at Squatch, SQUACH. Mike is at Sly Flourish. Sam is at DM Samuel. Anything else you guys want to talk about before we go?
Nope.
All right. Mike doesn't have any active Kickstarters going on right now. Sam just got the latest one. Yeah. I suggest people do.
It's out. Anybody can buy it.
This is the beautiful hardback.
I've been using the Fantastic Adventures pretty heavily.
Look at that.
Now that Grindleroot's out, I'm gonna see if I can incorporate some things. We'll see.
You should be able to incorporate some things.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, go to slyflourish.com. On the right-hand side is the cover. You can click on it and you can buy it right there.
Perfect. Excellent. All right. Nice. Well, then we'll call that the end of this episode. We'll see everybody next month, and say goodbye, guys.
Goodbye, guys.
Bye.